This video is for Filipinos who are permanent residents abroad, dual Filipino citizens, and former Filipinos. What's the difference for them? When traveling to the Philippines, do they have the same requirements? No. I think yung tatlong to, ito yung mga nalilito sa kanilang mga requirements kasi they're very similar. These people, you guys, you live abroad and Philippines may be just a second home to you, no? And will the requirements the same? Hindi po. Especially for former Filipinos. Itong Filipinos who are permanent residents abroad and dual citizens, Filipino citizens pa po sila. So their entry to the Philippines is much simpler and it's much more relaxed. For the former Filipino, so Filipino ka naman talaga by heart and by blood, pero let's say you have been naturalized na as a foreign citizen abroad, yun nga, wala ka na nga Philippine passport, yung foreign passport ka na lang, yun na po, meron lang po mga konting requirements kayo po, mas konting strict lang po. Kasi po, foreign national category na po yung former Filipino. Pag hindi na nag-apply ng dual citizenship, nag-reacquire ng Filipino citizenship, yan, former Filipino, nasa foreign national category na po. So, what is the difference, Jennifer? Sa mga Filipino permanent residents abroad, and for example, green card holders sa US, yan, yung kailangan nyo lang guys ipakita sa immigration upon arrival is yung Philippine passport nyo. And if your Philippine passport is less than 6 months valid, you can still travel to the Philippines. Okay? While if your Philippine passport has already expired, lost, or damaged, and you really need to go home na to the Philippines ASAP, you can apply for a travel document at the Philippine Embassy. And since you are permanent residents abroad, guys, just make sure that before you leave the country, your residents, comply ka lang kung meron silang requirements. So, for example, in the US, if you are a green card holder, you may leave the US multiple times and re-enter, as long as you do not intend to stay outside the US for 1 year or more. If you intend to stay outside the US for 1 year or more, then you must apply for a re-entry permit with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service prior to leaving the U.S. Yun lang naman if plan mo magstay sa Pilipinas ng more than 1 year. Kung hindi naman more than 1 year, okay lang, hindi mo na kailangan ng re-entry permit. For dual Filipino citizens, maybe you are naturalized U.S. citizen ka na and then nag-reacquire ka din ng Filipino citizenship, yung kailangan mo lang, kung meron ka nung Philippine passport, yung Philippine passport lang. Pero kung wala kang Philippine passport, foreign passport lang, if you only have your foreign passport, you can either show your certificate of retention or reacquisition of Philippine citizenship or identification certificate. So either of the two. So yun nga. Either foreign passport plus certificate or Philippine passport alone. For you guys, Filipinos who are permanent residents abroad and dual Filipino citizens, you only have to comply with really 3 requirements. Very simple. First, the negative test result, RT-PCR test taken 48 hours before departure. This is required for all passengers 4 years old and older. And then One Health Pass QR code, register to onehealthpass.com.ph, and then vaccination card or certificate. If you are unvaccinated, you can still enter the Philippines, but you will quarantine upon arrival and you will need pre-booked quarantine hotel for 5 nights if you are unvaccinated. And don't worry if you have children traveling with you who are unvaccinated, they will follow the protocols of their accompanying traveling Filipino parent or parents. Now, for former Filipinos, what you need to present to the immigration is your proof that you are indeed a former Filipino. So for example, your old or expired Filipino passport or a Philippine birth certificate. You can also use a previous balikbayan stamp, but it does not really replace itong dalawang to. It's best, it's the safest if you have either of these two, old Philippine passport or a Philippine birth certificate. For balikbayans, these are the requirements. Apart from the old Filipino passport and birth certificate, Ito lang guys, passport should be at least 6 months valid at the time of entry, negative RT-PCR, yung 48 hours, 1 health pass QR code, vaccination card or certificate, and then travel insurance with COVID-19 coverage of at least $35,000. So really, the main difference between dual Filipino citizens, Filipinos who are permanent residents abroad, versus former Filipinos are this. Filipinos are not required to have travel insurance, but former Filipinos are required to have a travel insurance. Yung passport, kahit hindi 6 months valid, okay lang. Pero pag former Filipino, kailangan 6 months at least valid or more. And then, allowable stay, of course, Filipinos can stay unlimited forever if they want. While for balikbayans, you are given 1 year initial stay here, and if you want, you can extend your stay, but you have to apply at the Bureau of Immigration Office. Pero 1 year, yun yung given sa inyo, balikbayan stamp. And then, for Filipino citizens, mga duals, they can enter the Philippines even if they are unvaccinated, but they will quarantine upon arrival. While in the case of former Filipinos, they must be fully vaxxed if they are 12 years old and older. Yan. Let's say, ayaw ko magpabakuna pero former Filipino ka, hindi po pwede, hindi ka makakapasok sa Philippines. Kasi nasa foreign national, visa-free entry category ka, you really need to be fully vaxxed to enter the Philippines. Kung former Filipino ka at wala kang maipakitang vaccination proof, then you will not be allowed to board your flight. And even if makaboard ka ng flight, magland ka sa Philippines, you may be sent back to your origin country. You need to be fully vaxxed to enter the Philippines. Kung J&J, 1 shot lang, that is accepted. If it's a 2-shot vaccine, you must get the 2 shots. Booster shot is not yet required. It's not required. Next up is recently recovered and still testing positive. That is also a difference between Filipino citizens versus former Filipinos. So, sa mga Filipinos, if they recently recovered from COVID, and let's say they're still testing positive, they may enter the Philippines. They just have to comply with these 3 things. However, that recently recovered, still testing positive protocol is only exclusive for Filipinos. Kung foreign national ka or former Filipino, you really have to test negative before you can enter the Philippines. Only Filipino citizens can enter the Philippines with a medical certificate and a positive test results. Next is travel tax. This is the same. This is the same for you guys, Filipinos na permanent residents abroad and duals, and then former Filipinos. As long as you stay for less than 1 year in the Philippines, then you are exempted from paying the travel tax of 1,620 pesos. Basta less than 1 year stay. Now, for former Filipinos naman who want to retire in the Philippines, stay there for good, you can apply for your dual citizenship in the Philippines. Yes po. You can apply for your reacquisition of Filipino citizenship in the Bureau of Immigration Office in Intramuros. So, it's possible to apply to reacquire your Filipino citizenship in the Philippines. If let's say wala ka ng time mag-apply sa abroad, pwede dito ka na mag-apply. So that's the difference between Filipinos who are permanent residents abroad and dual citizens versus former Filipinos. Former Filipinos need insurance. Former Filipinos need to be fully vaccinated if they are 12 years old and older. Former Filipinos need to test negative to enter the Philippines. And then former Filipinos need insurance. Travel insurance with COVID-19 coverage. Yun lang ang talagang big difference. So, I hope that is very clear now because I've been getting a lot of questions, no? And about kailangan ba ng insurance kung dual citizen or permanent resident abroad? Hindi naman. Basta Filipino citizen ka, hindi mo kailangan ng insurance. Hindi siya mandatory. So, I hope that this video has made it very clear. Thank you so much for watching. Please share this to anyone who wants to travel to the Philippines or may be confused about the requirements. Please leave a like on the video, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to stay updated with Philippine travels or Philippine updates. I'll see you with another update.